Teachers of Reddit. What's the worst thing you have heard a colleague say about a student? NSW. My teacher told us that a couple years before we had her, she had purposely called a student a word that she did not know was inappropriate. She only told us that it was a 7-letter word that started with S. Naturally, I dropped everything, stopped paying attention, and started racking my brain for every naught word I knew until 5 minutes after the conversation had ended I screamed scrotum in the middle of algebra. Teacher did not confirm nor deny, which means she confirmed. Spastic. A lot of people don't know it's considered offensive. There was a kid in my gym class who had a speech impediment, and when he wasn't around, the gym teacher would openly do offensive impressions of him in front of all of us students. Oh crap. I had an old basketball coach that did this to one of the kids. Kid was really freaking odd, but when he wasn't there he imitated him. Looking back, it's a lot more frick than I thought. A 40-something-year-old man making fun of a 9-year-old kid who obviously had some sort of mental disorder. Worst part is I laughed. Student here. My math teacher constantly makes jokes about kids in my class in regards to their race. If you're Asian, you will be told to stop studying Chinese characters if you are not paying attention. If you're Latino, he will ask questions about which community college you're going to. If you look European, like I do, he assumes you're an immigrant. I've been told multiple times to make sure to write your tests in English, and when calling him out on that, be told something along the lines of, in Poland your behavior would not be acceptable at all while keeping a stupid grin on his face. I wonder how he still has his job. If you're Asian, you will be told to stop studying Chinese characters if you are not paying attention. But that's not even funny. When I was in 6th grade, there was this kid. I'll call him Danny. Danny was an idiot of the highest caliber. The kid just sat there with a blank look on his face all day, every day. We're going over the human body and digestion one day, and teacher decides to throw Danny an easy question out to boost him up a bit. She asks him how we get liquid into our bodies. Danny sits there with a blank look and says, I don't know. She prompts him again by asking how he gets liquid into his body when he's thirsty. Danny replies, I don't know. She is amazingly frustrated by this point and goes as far to ask Danny, how do you get water into your body when you're thirsty? And he replies, I don't know. Through your skin, maybe? She freaks out and loses her crap. He's sitting there looking dazed as always and misses. Teacher charges to the back of the room and grabs his arm. She pulls him out of his seat and drags him to the front of the classroom where there was a sink. The water gets turned on and she shoves his arm into the stream and keeps yelling at him, through the skin, through the skin. How are you feeling now? Are you getting full? Are you getting enough water? You drink water with your mouth. I'm nearly 40 now and I will remember that scene for the rest of my life with mixed amounts of horror and amusement. Also, I apparently should have arbitrarily named him Kevin. Most of the people in here posting aren't teachers. I do teach, and let me tell you, my colleagues make fun of college students all the time. I have heard plenty of terrible things. Let me list some of my favorites. I honestly don't know how this person got into college because he can't read or write past a 4th grade level. There is a student who kept hitting on me, so I lost his final paper and said he never turned one in. Part of me wants to say F off to students coming into my office when they have stupid questions. I failed a student because one of his sentences in his research paper was too close to the opening paragraph of the reference paper he was citing. What kind of an idiot does that? I am failing the majority of my students. He was laughing as he said it. I had a substitute teacher in high school who was an old weird man. Two particular stories that pop into my mind are one of him calling a girl's name, asking her to lean out so he could see her, then saying there's a face for the memory banks. The other involved him discussing how he used to toughen up his sons and their football friends by holding their heads underwater until no bubbles came up, till American football is played underwater. One of my teachers called a classmate of ours a psycho when I was in 4th grade. She was not wrong at all. Probably should have mentioned that this was overheard between two teachers. She didn't say that straight to the child. This was only a small example of her antics. She really did have problems and was crazy. No one thought she had ASPD. Teachers were just fed up with her inventing to other teachers. Also, the chair throwing incident was in 3rd grade, and no one has gotten it yet. MRES in upstate SC. Third grade was the 2008 to 2009 school year for me. Well, you gotta give more detail now. Summer camp counselor here. One of sweetest kids we had a few years ago had a horrible lisp, and he was really puny. He had also broken his tailbone before camp and had to sit on a donut pillow. Let's call him White. And NBSP. We all sleep in the same cabins with the boys, ages 8-10 that year. On our team, my co-counselor has a horrible habit of talking in his sleep. He'd usually be rapping, singing, talking to his wife, and random harmless junk like that. He was famous for it, and the kids loved it. And NBSP. One night he started talking and woke up me and the kids. First he started reciting sports reports and singing random songs, but then his unconscious turned to Dwight. He began to perfectly imitate Dwight's poor little stuttering voice. My name is Boo. Boo. B-U. Butt pad. Oops. I left my butt pad back at the fire. Rut pit. Come on Gooiths. I does. Done. Don't sound like Daffy Duck. Pleth Gooiths. Leave me alone. He went on a few more lines like that. I looked down and Dwight was awake and mortified. And NBSP. Don't ask me how the rest of the summer went. I'm middle school. One of the teachers said he wanted to hang a black student. He was kidding and I don't think he meant it to sound sectarian, but it sure did. Nice to meet you high school and Jake. A student in 5th grade saw a psychologist to test him for learning difficulties. This was an average student of accepting, educated parents in a private school. The psychologist told the kid's parents that he would never go to college. WTF. How can you limit a 10-year-old's future like that? The parents were upset, but luckily ignored her. His current high school is a much better fit for him, and while he's not top of the class, there's no reason he shouldn't be able to pursue higher education if that's what he wants. In high school, when I told my counselor that I wanted to go to school for mathematics, he told me to give up on that and go to trade school because I took too many shop classes to be taken seriously in college. I'm currently in a Big 10 school ready to declare my actuarial major. My parents saw him the other day and pretty much told him to eat a dong. My mom teaches at my school. She told me some kid in her class is the dumbest mother on the planet. That kid sells me drugs. I honestly don't hear so many bad things, even after 15-something years. Probably the sleazy comments about female students. Even this type thing is rarely actually uttered aloud. Get a teacher drunk enough and you hear some crap. Both my parents were friends with a lot of teachers I had in my schools growing up. I would hear teachers talk about what kids to buy weed from, what kids would be failures, what kids would be dead in the next few years. And on one occasion I heard a teacher refer to a student as a stupid W who will ruin her life before high school. She did get pregnant in 8th grade, but still that's a fricked up thing to say. Okay, so both of my parents are teachers. My dad an elementary school teacher and my mom a high school teacher. From both ends the things teachers will say about students astound me. I've heard teachers racially profiling kids under the age of 12 because the writing on the bathroom wall was too ghetto to be written by a white child. I've overheard high school teachers calling students S and talking about how they shouldn't have to teach students that were just going to end up in fast food service. I once heard my dance teachers discussing a friend of mine's technique, but it eventually turned into vicious remarks about her weight, saying crap like they'd have to force her to do the exercises until she was throwing up from exhaustion to get her down to a tenth of the maximum weight she should be. She was 8 years old. If she was overweight, no, she was not, but compared to the rest of our incredibly skinny class she was larger. Reaffirming my belief that a large percentage of people involved in dance ballet are cunty people. I had a substitute teacher sub for me one day, and in her substitute teacher report for my 8th grade class, she wrote, Jenny, name changed, was lifting up her shirt to show the boys her navel ring. I predict she will be pregnant by next year. The worst thing I've ever said was directly at one of my students. I caught a kid, who's always disruptive, so I'm not too fond of him, talking, told him to stop talking while he was still talking, and he says, I wasn't talking. That's when I snapped and said, what are you, an idiot? I snapped. Sort of. The worst, or best, thing a student said in class was this guy named Justin. So Justin, Sunny, male, and Tanya are in the same class. Tanya had this habit of bringing in a big bottle of Sunny D in my class. I took it away and told her she can get it back at the end of class. Towards the middle of class, this exchange happened. Tanya, can I get my drink back? Me. Number. Tanya, but I'm thirsty. Justin. Tanya's thieist. Me. Tanya, you can get it back after class ends. Tanya, I want my Sunny D. Justin, she wants Sunny's D. At that point, the entire class busted up laughing. Thankfully, I kept a straight face and told Justin that that's inappropriate. Normally, I'd bust someone for something like that, but dang, it was so clever. My dad has been a teacher for over 20 years. On occasion, he invites one of his colleague drinking buddy Chad over. When Chad drinks, you can get him to start talking about his students. The worst stuff that both Chad and sometimes my dad will say is just how they talk about the kids. They already profile the kids immediately even though they are in middle school. Some of the stories are crazy. Some 8th grade girl would leave school to frick her sophomore boyfriend and then go back to school. I might show my frustration at times, but I don't say degrading things. That said, the number one thing they say that is messed up is something along the lines of you kids will never go to college and that's why you'll never amount to anything. One of my students even wrote an apology letter to my co-teacher because he lost it on her for basically nagging him in the middle of class. I left the classroom with him so that I could talk about what just happened. Apparently, as mentioned in his letter, she said in front of the other kids, that's what happens when you're not raised properly. My high school geometry teacher was just one of those old grouchy men who had been teaching forever and as a result, had no filter. One day he was looking for chalk and could not find it. There was this really sweet, but pretty big girl in class who he turned around to and said, "Where is my chalk? Did you eat it?" Just the look on this girl's face was terrible and she transferred out of the class shortly after. The worst part? I was the one who ate the chalk and didn't speak up. I went back to my high school to give a talk about college life in my major and my teachers were all dongs about all the kids. Look out for that one. She's a freaking C. Ask her a question about what her parents did if you wanna see her look like she's gonna cry. That was one from my adorable pottery teacher. We went out for drinks after but I was uncomfortable. What did they say about me? Before I start, I'm a 24 years old male and just into the IT industry. Last year as part of an intern program, I was working, still am, at this very wealthy private all-girls Catholic school that goes from preschool until year 12. Each year, the school would give students laptops which they had to return at the end of the school year. Upon returning them, we had to grade the laptops, A, B or C depending on quality. If it was A quality, the girl's family wouldn't be billed for damages. B quality was $50 for slight damages and C was $200 because something would need to be replaced, if not the entire laptop. So, with a co-worker with me, we would make it a game. Guess what grade you will get. This was a lot of fun and the students liked it. Eventually we get to the year 8s and we have been doing this for about 5 hours of the day. I ask the girl what she thinks her grade will be. She responds with, "You will probably have to give me a different grade like a D or E." I laugh. Start checking the laptop. It was actually in excellent condition and I told her I would give her an A. She goes, "Are you sure? I thought you would have to give me a C or worse." To which I responded, "What? Do you want me to give you the D?" As soon as it slipped from my lips, I've covered my mouth with both hands, looked straight at my co-worker whose jaw has just hit the floor and I've just gone to shaking me head and repeating, "No, no, 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 number." The student hasn't seemed to realize what I had said, so I've quickly got her to head back to class, but as she reaches the door has burst out laughing and runs to her friends. I've gone straight to my supervisor and told him what has happened, so try get onto the situation. Needless to say, nothing happened. Everything is fine. I do get mocked time to time by my co-workers. TLDR, I asked a year 8 student if she wants me to give her the D. I'm not a teacher, but in grade 9 I had a teacher tell me and my friend to go kill each other with knives. It was science class, and me and my best friend were talking during a lecture. Granted, we were acting like buttholes. If I'm in a boardroom meeting now and someone talks over me, it's the most infuriating thing in the world. but even if he had exploded and said, "Hey, shut the frick up, I'm talking," I would have understood. Instead we got, in eerily calm tones, "Why don't you two grab some knives and go outside and play with them? Stab each other, bleed all over, maybe one of you will die." That's actually pretty psychotic, and, more importantly, edgy as frick. When I was in middle school I got in trouble because I was accused of bullying by a teacher who had no proof. Our school counselor pulled me into his office and yelled saying that I would grow up to be diddler. Really made my day crappy. If I actually was bullying, and the answer is no. Some kid that I hung out with threw a basketball behind him and it landed onto the kid who was being bullied. We ran up and apologized, but a teacher saw the whole thing go down and overreacted. In other news, Hitler kind of annoyed Jews. I hope he was wrong and you live an awesome life. I had a teacher in high school tell me that she'd be shocked if I lived to 24, which I assume was her age at the time. 29 now and still kicking. Last year I worked in an emotional behavior disorder classroom. The other teachers would talk about my students like they were dogs. "We have to go in from recess now." "Why, Mrs.?" "Because Mrs. 12 cats let her beasts out." I remember a teacher saying that to her student. Another teacher, who sat her kids at my student's lunch table, yelled at me, in the crowded lunchroom, to my face, that she couldn't believe I let my animals sit with her children, as if they were tamed. My students were sitting right next to me. I could hear them make comments about needing leashes, kenneling them, and even a few teachers telling me I should let them be put down, as if that was a great metaphor for my situation. All year, so glad to leave that heckhole of a school. I'm a student, but in 8th grade, I caught my history teacher looking down one of my classmates' shirt, female. I was kind of shocked and I guess my classmate found out. She abruptly sat straight and the following happened. "Classmate, I get uncomfortable when someone's looking down my shirt." "Teacher, sorry, I'll give some extra bonus points at the end of class." Note, my teacher rarely gives bonus points. Doesn't exactly fit the question, but one of my friend's middle school teachers, we met in high school, hated him with a passion. No one had any idea why, and he made no effort to mask it. Anytime they had a word problem in class, be it on a test or just a practice problem on the whiteboard, it would be making fun of how fat my friend was. If the circumference of his stomach is 100 inches on Monday, 120 inches Wednesday, and 140 inches Friday, what is the rate of change of his bloated body? What can we expect its circumference to be on Sunday? Stuff like that. My friend would cry in after class pretty regularly, and the other kids felt bad for him and didn't know what to do. The weird thing was the kid wasn't remotely fat. There were apparently much chubbier kids in his class who never got picked on. He also wasn't weird or a loner. He was pretty popular and definitely well liked by other teachers. As far as I know, the teacher was reprimanded eventually but did not stop his bullying until the kid graduated to high school. Awful stuff. I was sitting on a bench at dismissal time with a coworker. She looked at a first grader and said, "Do you know that girl? She's very pretty. She's definitely an Oreo." I didn't know what she meant, so she explained it was a cute thing her and her assistant liked to call mixed race students. Yay, real adorable. When I was in high school we had a Canadian economics teacher who really just wasn't cut out for teaching. She was pretty fragile, emotionally. One day she draws up an impromptu pie graph with the figures 70%, 20%, 12%, and 10%. When I pointed that added up to 112%, she screamed, "Well, whatever," ran to the back of the classroom and locked herself in her office. We sat in stunned silence for about a minute, then everyone started talking. She came back out of her office and screamed, "Put your heads on your fricking desks and go to sleep. Christ, I fricking hate you all." The maths teacher from next door came in and escorted her to the staff room, then came back saying someone will be here shortly to take over your class. But suffice it to say, I think you've seen the last of Miss White. She was promptly fired, but she still had all of our essays which she hadn't yet marked at her house. When the deputy principal showed up to get them back, she handed him a box of ashes, telling him she burned them all. She then got charged with something. Destruction of government property, I think, because they ruled the essays no longer belonged to the students, but to the Ministry of Education. I interned with a kindergarten teacher for a few months a while back. One day at recess, I heard one of the other teachers talking about how tired she was of this retarded little crap's antics, while referring to a developmentally challenged kid who was being chased around and bullied by the other students. Being a decent person, I shot her a dirty look and chased the bullies off before pulling the kid to the side to make sure he was okay and tell him it's not his fault. I also complimented his SpongeBob shirt, which totally brightened him up. I got him talking about SpongeBob and another kid ended up overhearing and going off to play with him and talk about SpongeBob together. 3. I work in special ed and more often than not the people working with them are more like the lady you described than you are. Keep on doing what you're doing. Hopefully it'll shame the rest of them to start. Wife is a middle school math teacher. I just asked her what the worst she has heard. She said she had a teacher friend say that she wished to read about a particular student being debauched in prison one day. Again, middle school teacher. Jeez. Not a teacher, but when I was in high school, there was this girl in my class that had a condition where her knees pointed in, which caused her to walk differently. My world history teacher called her out and told her that the only reason she has friends is because she is disabled. I still hate that teacher to this day. My wife is a teacher. She had a teaching assistant in one of her classes. They were working after school hours in a study session with some students who needed extra help. One of the students was a troubled girl. She was sweet, but not very good at school. My wife worked for months to boost the girl's confidence and she was slowly getting better because of the after school sessions. It was a challenge initially to get the student to attend class, let alone extra study sessions. The teaching assistant was not very good at his job. The girl asked him a question and he got frustrated and snapped at her. "God, I don't know why I bother with you. You're useless." The girl started crying, ran out of the room, and my wife didn't see her again. Not in class, not in extra help. The girl just straight gave up on school because of that comment. My wife cried when she told me at the end of the day. My 7th grade teacher told me that he wanted to tie a student to the back of his car and drag him through town. This guy was big, bulky ex-Navy white guy. The student was black, and as far as I know simply didn't try in class. He didn't even make trouble. I had no idea what to say to him after he said that. Since so many of you are asking why race is relevant, here is why. He hated black students because they were black. Everyone knew it. He also constantly poked fun at fat students too. My sister dated his son in high school and he told her that his dad wanted to shoot fat people. That's what happens when you go middle school in the South. This kid in elementary school was named Faisal. In French, if you pronounce it poorly, it could sound something like dirty butt, and our gym teacher would make sure to pronounce it that way every time. The kid would get annoyed, obviously, and act out, to which the teacher would respond by putting him in our equivalent of timeout, and telling him not to come back until he was acting more like a clean butt. The other kids laughed, but as a fellow son of immigrants, I couldn't. I could tell he was distraught. When I was 16, I told my teachers I was going to have major stomach surgery and I would be out. I told them all. 3 of them failed me for the entire semester and one of those 3 made fun of me to my class. The other students who were my friends told me that the kids who didn't like me and that teacher made fun of me for the first 30 minutes of class. My guidance counselor then made fun of me to my face and only stopped when I started crying. Public school in Vegas. Dang. Way down the list, but whatever. My old roommate used to substitute at a city high school in Massachusetts. One day he told the class butthole to stop talking during class. The kid stood up and said, "Who do you think you are, my father? Are you my father?" My friend said, "I don't know." "Who's your mother?" Class laughed. Kid went nuts. My roommate was never asked to come back and sub. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.